This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
I think a lot of us, hopefully if you're watching this video at least, are big fans of Eric Johnson, and if you're a fan of Eric Johnson you will no doubt have heard of the Tube Driver. I think it's the pedal that we most closely associate with being on Eric Johnson's board at basically all times. Of course, other great players including David Gilmour have used these through the years. Now the Crazy Tubes circuit, Venus, has a tube in it and is designed to basically do the job of the Tube Driver, but there have been various versions of the Tube Driver over the years, rack mount versions and stuff like that. So kind of the point of this video is to see what these things sound like, both into Helix native and into the Deluxe Reverb. So in the main chunk of the demo you're going to hear it into the Deluxe Reverb, and see if I can get similar vibes from them, and hopefully this will give you some answers. I definitely had some questions from folks who were saying, like, are these at all similar? The, of course, negative thing about the Tube Driver in general, you know, these are still quite affordable relative to other boutique sort of pedals, but they are basically, they all come with this American style thing, as well as being, you know, needed to be plugged into an actual power outlet. And not only that, but internally the transformer needs to be wired for either the US or the UK. So touring these is not so much of an option, right? Because you can basically just fry an American version in the UK or vice versa. So, as I found out. Anyway, Lowell kindly sent me this one over from Austin, I think Austin or Dallas, one of the two, somewhere in Texas, which I really appreciated. It was on his shelf. But in any case, hopefully this gives you some idea of like the vibes of both of these pedals. And I think, to be honest, it's got to be an integral part of Eric Johnson's tone for getting that sort of saggy violin stuff, but still a lot of articulation. The Tube Driver will get you somewhere close to the ballpark, and you're going to have to do the rest of the work yourself. Okay, so I've just set this up quickly. We got the Venus here, Tube Driver here. When we're on loop 2, we're on Venus. When we're on loop 1, we're on Tube Driver. Now, I would say I think there's something with my power in this house going on. So both are kind of noisy-ish, but I think the Venus Isle is a bit noisier, but I don't think this is maybe indicative of actual noise levels. I think there's just something dodgy going on with the power in my house. Anyway, so if we have the amp just by itself, so I've got the settings roughly similar. So at the moment, the tube driver, I'd say, is a bit more in the way of lows. I'm going to increase the drive on here a bit and the lows. Take that drive down a bit. Now we do have bias on both of these, and if I tone the bias down to about halfway, obviously there's a lot of variables here that could be changing the tone. I just wanted to give you some idea of whether these are in the ballpark. And bias up full now. Now we do have on here as well, we've got a mid control. Which can really shape the tone even more. Max the drive. One thing I should also try really before wrapping this up is, what about cleaning up? So I think in conclusion, I'm feeling like this has a little bit more sort of tube sagginess to it, but with chord, gets a bit more brash, whereas the Venus Isle maybe isn't quite as smooth. On the single night stuff, but on the chord stuff, I think I marginally prefer the Venus. And obviously in terms of board friendliness, it's very hard to beat the Venus. So yes, I think it definitely can cop the tones of a real tube driver, and that to me is pretty compelling. Anyway, I'll catch you in another video soon. Cheers for stopping by.